and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
David Whiting joins us. He is here to give you some free legal advice. He has been doing it for quite some time. David, welcome.
Thank you, Rap.
Longest running presenter on the radio station. You had some homework.
I did. I had lots of homework, but I had two really interesting bits of homework. The first one was Yvonne from Clyde North, who wanted to know whether or not she could have a cannabis plant for her own purposes, essentially, so she doesn't have to go and pay for a prescription. And the answer was, can she have one? And the answer to the question is not lawfully. There's a piece of legislation in Victoria. You need a licence, and in Victoria it's the Drugs, Poisons and Controlled Substances Act. There's also federal legislation. Don't even try for a federal one. That's for commercial cultivation. There is a Victorian piece of legislation, and you can apply for an authorisation for commercial or research purposes relating to non-therapeutic use. Now, Yvonne didn't sound to me like she wanted to do it for non-therapeutic use, so we don't need to go further. If you were to make an application for such an authorisation, the application fee is $1,400.
Right.
Okay.
But you could technically apply for research in your backyard as long as you're willing to pay the fee and fill in the form?
But satisfy the Secretary of the Department that it's for commercial and research purposes relating to non-therapeutic use.
Hard.
And I'm assuming that someone who wants to smoke it is using it for non-therapeutic use. Could be wrong, but that's my premise. In the event that you get convicted with possession of one, the penalty, if you can satisfy the court on the balance of probabilities that it's not for trafficking purposes, it's up to a year in jail or a fine of up to $3,000.
There's still a jail sentence for one plant.
Yeah, you've got to ask whether or not anyone will ever go to the trouble of taking you to court.
Yeah, I'm just interested
But in theory, it's a year or $3,300 or both.
Wow.
Right? Now, on the other hand, if you can't persuade the court that it's not for trafficking purposes, it's imprisonment for up to 15 years.
Yeah, you don't want to face that.
No.
Yvonne actually called in to hear the answer to the David's homework question. What did you make of that answer, Yvonne?
I am absolutely shocked because it is for medicinal purposes.
Yeah, but you can't grow. You won't be given.
You won't get a permit under Victorian law unless it's for non-therapeutic purposes, and there's a whole investigation and there are standards and there are all sorts of issues.
You need to be running a lab, basically.
Essentially, yes. Yeah.
One lousy plant.
Well, no, so it's not a lousy plant. It's a plant you would cherish and love, Yvonne.
Yeah.
Well, I would. It would help relieve my pain.
Yep. What does a prescription for medicinal marijuana cost?
They're around $300 a month.
Yeah, it's expensive. It's not cheap.
Okay,
it's
understood.
Not cheap. Yeah.
I understand, Yvonne, but can I say there's also a fine of up to $3,300 for possession?
Yes, so stay away from that.
Yep.
Yvonne, thank you, and thanks for being there again for the homework. You had another issue to do with a fire.
No.
Another bit of
it was
homework.
the outcome of the fire. Michael called. His street had been re-asphalted by council, and when they lay the asphalt, it's a whole new surface, and what they then need to do is go around and dig the little holes where there are surface facilities like fire plugs that need to be uncovered. Now, what Michael told us was that there were several months where that work had not been done, and the house next door burnt down, and he's assessed that he's some couple of $100,000 out of pocket as a result. Road Management Act, a fairly dubious piece of legislation. The council has a statutory duty to inspect, maintain and repair public roads. But here's the catch. The relevant road authority, council, may determine the standard to which the council will construct, inspect, maintain and repair roadways and road infrastructure and road-related infrastructure. So the answer would be, yep, but it's up to them to determine the standard to which they will do it. So what Michael needs to do is go to council and say, may I have a copy of your standard, the standard to which you will do these things. and see what, and that's where I would start the process. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I hope that helps. Good luck, Michael. George is in Oakley. What is your query, George?
Good morning. I'm worried about the community aspect of bushfires and uncontrolled fires on fire ban days. Is tobacco use banned in the outdoors during fire bans?
I do not believe so, George.
Well, so sort of a contradiction of the terms of burning.
Oh, I find that every day, George. Everybody is, there's contradictions in everything, yes. So I do not believe that tobacco smoking, but, dropping your matches would, if you're one of those old-fashioned people with matches, dropping a lit match would be an offence on a total fire ban day.
Thank you, George, for the query. 1300 222 774 if you've got a query for David Whiting. Glenn is in Langwarrin. Glenn, what did you want to ask?
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I was involved in an assault and in property damage at work. The gentleman was charged and pleaded guilty.
Why are you calling him a gentleman, Glenn? Doesn't sound like a gentleman.
Well, this is the ABC. I'm trying to be polite.
Okay, good. We're quality listeners. Good. Yep.
He received community hours in order to pay for the damage. I didn't go or want to be involved in the court case, but after that, I'd given the police a quote prior to that for the damaged property. On completion, I received a cheque for half the amount of the property that was damaged. So I tried to contact the police. The policeman doesn't actually work at that station anymore. I just wanted to know why I actually only received half the payment of the value of the goods and what I can do about it.
Let's split them in two. What will happen will be, when the plea hearing went on, the magistrate will have sought information in relation to a compensation claim. Have you sought compensation? The answer was yes, you have. So the magistrate gets told what you have told the police officer, the informant. Although if the perpetrator pleaded guilty, even the informant wouldn't be there. It would be the prosecutor giving a summary, providing your evidence, and the magistrate determining that in these circumstances the amount you're getting was half. Now, I can tell you that all the proceedings in the magistrate's court are recorded. So if you're able to provide details of the case to the court, it is possible to get a transcript of the interaction.
Okay.
Now, in the event that you wanted to take it further, I mean, what you're doing is you're only now arguing about half the money.
Yes.
So it then becomes, and what was your claim?
It was $8,000 I received a cheque for.
Right. Well, that might well be that you didn't satisfy the magistrate as to your loss.
Okay.
Now, that doesn't mean you mightn't satisfy another magistrate in another proceeding, but that's entirely up to you. You need a little bit more information, but you would start with the transcript of the court hearing where the order for $4,000 was made.
Okay.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
Good luck.
Okay.
Thanks, Glenn. 1300 222 774. Your question for David Whiting from Brian in Atwood. What is it, Brian?
Good morning, David. A couple of weeks ago, I misread a parking sign and my car was impounded. It was my error. I understand it was my error. It was a main artery. I got the car back. I paid the $360 the following day. But then just
otherwise you wouldn't have got the car back, Brian.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But last week I received an infringement notice for the same offence.
No, you didn't. You received an infringement notice because your car was unlawfully parked. As a result of the car being unlawfully parked, they have the right to remove the vehicle from the road. The impound fee that you pay is as a consequence of the vehicle's removal.
Right. It seems like...
Yep, it does to me too.
Unethical, and it's a double dipping thing where I'm getting hit twice for the one offence.
No, there is an offence for parking illegally, and then there is a removal fee. So it's technically two. It's another reason to make sure you read the signs better.
Absolutely. So there's no recourse for me at all.
Well, your argument would be that you weren't parking unlawfully. You could write to the court, or not to the court. You could write to the council that issued the infringement notice, and say that you think it's unfair, or the reason why you were parked there on that day at that time. Don't like your chances, but you could certainly do that.
It was a very, very mercenary thing because both tickets had 4:05, which is 5 minutes after the expiry time.
Yeah.
Brian, when you parked there, did you not see the tow trucks waiting?
I should have. I think if I looked around the corner, they'd be there.
Yes.
Very quickly, Brian, what's the full damage? So cost for moving the car?
$360 for impounding.
And what was the fine?
Infringement notice?
And $190 for the infringement. So it's $550.
Wow.
Right. Next time, put it in a parking station.
Good luck, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you. You won't get too much luck there. Look, we do have lines free. We often do not have any lines free. There are lines free. So if you want to ask David Whiting your legal question, now is your opportunity. 1300 222 774. Simon's in Morwell. What do you want to ask, Simon?
Yes, good morning. I have a query about the Road Traffic Act. We regularly hear on this station and others advice from Vic Roads, which I have verified is their advice, that if the traffic lights are down at an intersection, we should treat it like a stop or give way sign. Now, for my money, this rather ignores the fact that the give way to the right is the primary rule. I do seem to recall that David himself actually said that even if someone runs a red light, you still have to give way to the right. And it also rather ignores the fact that if you followed this advice, nobody could ever move because the people on the North-South Road would have to give total way to everybody.
So, Simon, is this a policy position or do you have a question?
Well, the question is, what is the law? Because my belief is you should actually, in this instance, apply the give way to the right rule and effectively treat the intersection as a roundabout.
Interesting. What is the law?
Simon, I'm taking that one on notice because, to my mind, in the absence of a particular statutory provision, it would be the give way to the right rule. And that would, even if it was a very minor road and a very major road. I do think that the give way and the stop sign is a good idea because it encourages caution, which I think is
and that's
where
the big
we ought
road
to be.
Messaging.
That's the messaging. But if you want to know what the provision is in the what is now called the Road Safety Act, I'll let you know next week, Simon.
We'll look it up. That's
so
a good
drive
question.
carefully between now and then.
That's right, and hopefully we won't lose any more lights. I'll get to your calls in a moment.
Ever wanted to know how to better control the chatter in your head? What happens when we let our most destructive emotions dominate? Or how you can get a better night's sleep?
But at night, it's often the first time that we've allowed ourselves to stop.
I'm Sana Kadar, and I'd like to take you on an exploration of the mental, the mind, the brain, and behavior.
We can also use our inner voice to do more complicated things in life, and there's variability with respect to how much we lean on it.
All in the Mind is a podcast that aims to enlighten you on all of this and more. Hear it now on the ABC Listen app.
This is ABC Radio Melbourne with Raph Epstein.
Very quick question on the text, actually, David Whiting. What is the difference between an informant and a witness?
The informant is the person who says to the court that Raph Epstein has done something horrible. The witness is the person who provides evidence to the court of the commission of the offence. So think of it as being, the informant is almost always a police officer or a council officer or a bylaws officer or Department of Agriculture, something like that. And the witness is people who corroborate or provide evidence as to the commission of the offence.
I saw Raph Epstein park his car in a clearway.
Yes.
So that would be the witness.
Yeah.
Haven't done that since I did that in England and copped a fine equivalent to more than 1,000 Australian dollars.
Okay.
There you go. That taught me that lesson. Ian, you're in Kensington. What do you want to ask?
In Kensington?
That is you. Go for it.
Oh, great. Thanks, David and Raph. Raph, this is about my yacht and many other yachts, but mine in particular that's parked at Williamstown, or berthed at Williamstown at the yacht club there. Now, since the speed limit has been increased radically for the ferry that plies between Port Arlington and Geelong, there's been many incidents of damage where the surge that the ferry creates hits the boats and they all wobble backwards and forwards and the masts clash.
Yes.
Now, this has happened to me, and the damage is about $1,500.
Yep. Every time.
And sorry?
Every time.
Well, yeah, the guys in front of me, another boat, their damage is up to $5,000, and they've just refused to put the instruments back on the top of their mast.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's only a matter of time before there's some people hurt too, because you go up the mast to fix it, and if the ferry comes through...
What's your question, Ian?
My question is, who do I tackle to pay for the damage caused by the ferry to my mast?
I do not believe you'll be able to recover it from the ferry. I do not believe you'll be able to recover it from anyone. What you need to do is, if you're concerned about the speed limit in the area concerned, it's talking to the authority that controls the waterways and the speed limit which is applied. So right. It's lawful for them to do presumably what speed they were doing, and that therefore it's really up to you to go along and say, no, speed's too high, having regard to the needs of other water users.
Good luck, Ian, with those that set the speed limits. Carissa is in Ferntree Gully. Carissa, what would you like to ask?
Oh, hi, David and Russ. Look, my dad suffered a brain injury a couple of years ago, and I went joint administrator with my mum, who's also disabled, for my dad. But my mum, being his spouse, is sort of not allowing me to have much of a say in what they do financially.
Yes.
So, one, I'm wondering, they're about to lose their house pretty much, and I'm wondering whether I am liable in any way for what happens to him, or what I can do to exert some sort of administration over what they're currently doing.
I would be suggesting, Carissa, that you go to VCAT and you ask VCAT for one of two answers. The first is to release you as an administrator on the basis that you don't have a working relationship with the other administrator. And the second is to come along and say, well, in the circumstances, it is appropriate that I be the administrator on my own.
Okay.
So there may be some residual responsibility if you don't do anything, and 5 minutes here isn't the time for the answer. So you're going to VCAT and saying, I have a problem, I can't work with my mum, and therefore this isn't working, so it needs to be a change. And you need to make up your mind if your change is, I just want to be able to walk away from this, or I'm happy to take the responsibility but not with my mother.
Right, okay. And if I was to do nothing, am I going to be in trouble?
Well, somebody's got to sue you, Carissa.
Okay, all right.
So there is unlikely to be an issue, but somebody might come along and say that ratbag Carissa from Ferntree Gully, somebody needs to have a go at her because she didn't do her job properly. So I'm saying you go to VCAT and say, I have a problem.
Yep.
Okay,
thank you so much.
Good luck, Carissa, and also be aware there are financial counsellors out there. They might be able to help. If your parents are really facing losing their house, there might be some options there, but I'm not sure. Can't tell the extent of how much your advice is listened to. Bernie is calling from North Melbourne. What's your query, Bernie?
Look, we've got a double-storey terrace house, and next door neighbour has a single-storey terrace house, and I've got render on that wall. It's not a party wall. It's separate.
And your wall extends above the roof next door. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yep.
And the render is falling off.
Yes.
And I need to remove it or repair it. And the neighbours, it's a rental property, and the neighbours' owners are not allowing us access to their property. So I'm stuck. I can't access the wall to fix it, but it is falling off, and I'm potentially up for damage to their property. The people who are using the property.
Bernie, you have no right of access to the airspace above your neighbour's property to fix your wall. I know you want to. I know why you want to. I think it's entirely reasonable. But the law doesn't give you, if someone builds to the boundary, you don't have the right of access to the other side of the boundary to fix things. So even if you were to come over the top and hang workmen from the top to fix the wall, no, that's trespass.
They can say no.
They can say no.
Mm-hmm. So potentially, if the render falls off and injures anybody walking in or out of that property, who's liable?
You are. It's your render, Bernie. Bernie, what would happen would be there are some issues in relation to contribution.
Yep.
So I think you would need to make it clear that if something goes wrong, their refusal to allow you to do any work would be taken into account in determining what damages you would need to pay. Right. So it's not a complete absolution because they wouldn't allow you, but you have no right to go onto someone else's property to fix the problem.
Well,
should you get a lawyer letter? And so you could file that away. You could say, this is my understanding of the problem. If there's trouble on that side.
Look, that would be a start. I would be seeking permission from the question would be whether the tenants would be willing to give you permission,
well, that would be
or it needs to come from the owner. And it needs to be...
Sorry, Bernie?
The tenants have given us permission.
But not the owner.
But the owners have refused to give us permission, in writing too, I might add.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, why would you... I would be trying to get some kind of external assessment, someone who can look at it and give you an estimate as to what might happen over the next couple of years in terms of damage, and use that as part of your argument that you ought to allow me access because it's in our mutual benefit.
Good luck, Bernie. It seems that is an interesting one. Bob is calling from North Melbourne. What's your query, Bob?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Okay, my question is, I applied for a police check for volunteer work at a welfare agency here in Victoria. I'd done this before for the federal government with DFAT, where I did 3 years work overseas as a volunteer. The police check came back clean. My recent police check came back from an offence from 57 years ago.
Wow.
When I was 16 from South Australia, it was an offence without conviction. Now, firstly, I want to know why it wasn't expunged, and secondly, the offence reads breaking into and vagrancy, whereas what I was charged with was receiving property knowing it to be stolen.
Yes, a summary offence.
So what can I do about this? Or should I do anything about it, or should I just forget it? It's 57 years ago.
Well, there's certainly legislation in Victoria about stale offences. And let me have a look, Bob. I need to look at South Australia for stale offences and also Victoria, because we have legislation in Victoria that says some kinds of offences we forget about after 10 years. Let's see what South Australia's got, and I'll take it on notice, Bob.
And just for clarity, Bob, you asked for that police check from the Australian Federal Police or from Victoria Police?
No, I had one from the... I think this is the Victorian Police.
Victorian Police.
Welfare agency here in Victoria.
Okay,
I have had a federal one for DFAT before.
That was different.
The other question, though, Bob, and I don't know the answer to this, is whether a police check discloses everything. And it may well be that you got a police check from the Federal Police for an overseas volunteer position that was assessed as having no impact on your appointment.
Not relevant.
No. So, for example, if you apply for a working with children check, it may well be that, 57 years ago you did a shoplifting charge, but that wouldn't stop you getting a working with children check. But if you got one last week, it might.
Interesting.
So it's really a question of... so there's a filtering on one. The question is there a filtering on a Victorian police one? I'll let you know. Thank you, Bob.
And Jane, if we can keep it brief, I've got to get some news headlines in a moment, but what is your query calling from East Malvern?
That's right. I've been getting some fines from Clone Plates, and Fines Victoria won't accept a stack deck.
Because you've gone too far, Jane. Right? You are at Fines Victoria. So what's happened is that someone has issued an infringement notice, and then the reminder letter, and then a court order was made, and now it's at Fines Victoria. You need to find some way of going back and dealing with the magistrate's court proceeding and get that order set aside, because Fines Victoria says, I have a court order, I have to enforce it. It's not up to me to say it's not fair, it shouldn't be there, Jane's not at fault. There will be a failing at the point where the infringement notice was served, the reminder letter was served, you had an option to take it to court, presumably everybody's address is right, and then you are where you are. Fines Victoria has no choice.
But this is the first fine, and the tolls won't accept plates.
But it's at Fines Victoria.
So you need to find the origin.
Which means you need to go back to the magistrate's order and the reminder letter and the infringement notice. There are, within timeframes, review rights, but you've got to meet...
They won't accept a stat deck.
No.
I've done the reviews.
And when you did the review, the magistrate's court refused to withdraw the fines?
Yep.
Then the answer would be...
We're getting a few of them because we have an LMCT. So it happens so much. I get so many fines. We black them out on all advertising, and it's not only toll fines, it is speeding fines.
So they've got copies of your plates and they're copying the fines.
Jane's a licensed motor car trader.
Yeah.
So what happens is you see an ad on a car sale sign and you say, oh, that's a number plate that I could use.
Yeah.
Yep.
What can she do?
What she's currently doing.
Jane, good luck. I'm not sure there is a simple solution there. David Whiting, thank you. You've got a bit of homework there.
I do.
David Whiting takes your calls each Tuesday.